All right, I was excited I have the coveted pre-lunch spot, but everyone's been ahead of schedule, so I'm gonna have to drag this out and tell a bunch of stupid jokes. No. So as you can see, I'm Anthony Baldwin with Crescent Point Energy. Sorry you have to look at my ugly mug up there while I figure out this clicker. So I'll give a quick high-level flyover of Crescent Point. Our plans in the basin, some of the results we've gotten. I know this is a diverse audience, so I've geared a few slides for just general education. So if you are specific to oil and gas, maybe catch up on your emails at that point. And then I've got some exciting well results that'll probably interest you more than the rest of the diverse crowd. So Crescent Point was founded in 2001 in Calgary. Our U.S. operations began in 2011. We entered the Uinta Basin in 2012, and since that time, we've had the exact same strategy. Essentially, we focus on acquiring big oil in place. The thesis there being we can change a lot of things with technology, and we can change our understanding of how much oil in place is, but we can't actually physically change that. So that's kind of the underlying hinge of our strategy. And then over the years, we've learned to develop and enhance recovery factors by employing technology. Obviously, the technology flavor of the day is horizontal drilling with multi-stage fracking, which was something we obviously wanted to try to bring more of to the basin. As a company, we've drilled over 5,000 horizontal wells throughout North America. If you're talking to Malcolm Gladwell, we probably have to drill 5,000 more to be experts, but getting there. And then to make sure we can kind of continue to execute this plan no matter what the commodity price cycle, we manage our risk. And we do that by maintaining low leverage to our cash flow, which has climbed obviously with declining cash flow in these low commodity price environments. We maintain a strong unutilized bucket of dry powder in our unutilized bank line. And then we hedge as far as we can. Typically, we'd like to be 3.5 years out, but with the shape of the oil curve the past few years, a little tough to execute as it's been backwardated. So real quick, I won't focus on all the other assets aside from Utah, but as you can see, a pretty great presence in Canada. Corporately produce around 175,000 barrels a day. We'll exit in Utah around 19,000 barrels a day this year and have a huge depth of undrilled inventory that we slowly chip away at. We have operations in North Dakota and then obviously in the Uinta Basin, which has grown to be the main focus of our capital budget and growth of our company. You can think of the Canadian assets as similar to as Phil was saying with the African assets, kind of a cash flow generating machine that we use to fund growth here. So we're in very early days, high investment, and expecting to be cash flow positive, where we're actually getting money out by 2020. But at this point, really just delineating what we have and figuring out how we get that into manufacturing mode. So when we entered the Uinta Basin, we had a pretty simple strategy on point with our corporate strategy. So I've got a really big, long quote up here, but essentially all it's saying is there's big oil in place here, and we want to drill horizontal wells. So that's what we've been working on for 5 years. Next slide is a bit of an analogy I stole from James Schurer, so I want to give him credit. But I wanted to quickly just explain vertical drilling versus horizontal drilling, and what better way to do that than with a dessert. So as you can see on the left, you've got the old vertical drilling in a juicy, highly permeable reservoir. That was probably the wells back in 1948 that Dr. Nelson was referring to. The low-hanging fruit was picked. Along the way, smart engineers developed methods to frack into zones, still utilizing vertical well bores and improving the permeability in the reservoir to improve productivity. Fast forward to the 1990s, companies developed methods to drill horizontally and drill miles down into the earth and land in 20 feet zones and steer lateral wells up to a mile. That technology is developed, so now you can drill out to 2 to 3 miles if you really push it. And then, kind of in the mid-2000s, 2005, 2006, companies began experimenting with applying frac technology to horizontal wells. Initially, just doing a big bullhead frac right out the toe of the well bore. Still got better production. And then the Packers system developed, and here we are, 10, 12 years into that evolution where guys have figured out ways to maximize frac stages, frac sizes continue to get better, fluid technology continues to get better. That's allowed pump rates to continue to get better. And you've seen, even since 2011, 2012, dramatic improvements in the productivity of wells all across North America and the world. So why did Crescent Point think we could apply horizontal technology to the Uinta Basin? To me, this is one of our favorite slides in the corporate slide deck, and really what it's trying to do is just show the amount of resource in the Uinta relative to all the plays you hear about in the news all the time. On the far left, you've got the Midland Basin, which is one sub-basin of the Permian. You can see an incredible resource. No one can deny that. Over 3,000 to 5,000 feet of gross pay available. Second to that, you've got Uintah with kind of 2,000 to 3,000 feet of gross pay ready to develop. I will point out that 20 to 50 million barrel per section estimate of oil in place is very subject to change as we take more core samples, tighten up our petrophysics, drill more wells, work on recovery factors, and ultimately increase the estimate of what's there. And then you can see a number of different plays on the right. The Montney plays, very current in Canada. It's in northeast British Columbia, Eagle Ford in South Texas, the Niobrara, and the Basin. But again, just the number of zones and the oil in place there ready to exploit is pretty incredible. I will say that the geology is not easy in the Uinta, though, and hence the intense petrophysics work, and hence why it's taken us 5 years to develop where we've gotten to. So just to zoom in on our actual Uinta assets, when we first entered the basin, you can see Randelette up there. That's just kind of southwest of Roosevelt. That was Crescent Point's main operated area, developed in partnership with the Ute tribe. And we started out drilling vertical wells. Oil was $100 at the time, and those made sense as we tried to identify zones that would work as specific horizontal candidates. Since that time in Randelette, we've got about 30 producing wells in the 30 producing horizontal wells, pardon me, and those have been mainly focused on the Castle Peak zone, 2/3 of those, and then we've spent a little bit of money testing the other zones. I'll get into the Castle Peak well results in a second here, and then kind of wrap up with some of the Wasatch and Uteland Butte wells or results we've seen early on, and then wrap up. But anyways, we've grown production to 19,000 BOE a day. Our land base has increased roughly 66% to almost 300,000 acres. You can see that recovery to date of 0.7%. That's what really just highlights how much work is left to do. And that's something I can't emphasize enough. We're in inning one after 5 years. So that just, again, repeats how much resource is here. This year we're going to drill roughly 25 wells, and corporately roughly 20% of our budget. And that production growth is 50%. Our corporate production growth is around 10% per share. So that just shows you how much the Uinta is floating our company's growth. And then this year we also were able to capture some more acreage and the ability to operate on the eastern side of the basin, just south of Duchesne. And we've put two horizontal wells to date in the ground, and we're not yet talking about results, but pretty excited to see what we can do out there. And then Newfield's been in the middle of us, been in their pick for years and doing a great job. We're partnering with them as well, learning. So obviously great partnerships there. And wanted to mention, in the kind of north of Newfield, there's another company, Axia, really pushing the limits with horizontal development. So finally, to get to the slide I kept accidentally going to. What have we done in the Castle Peak? So just to describe the graph on the left, you've got cumulative production in just barrels of oil, and then time on the x-axis. The blue line is our 1 mile type well. And I use that term type well loosely because with the limited production history and the number of wells in the ground, we're doing our best to come up with something, a blanket assumption you can apply everywhere, but there's a ton of variability early days. And you can see, in the first 90 days, you'll cum almost 60,000 barrels. So pretty good. The type well chart along the bottom there highlights roughly 380,000 MBOE, 380,000 BOE. Interestingly enough, you can see the IP30 rate of around 600 barrels a day, and then the IP90 is actually higher, which is kind of odd to see. That relates to the fact that we'll flow our wells for a while, let them die off, and then get them on pump. And then the well cost of $5 million, that we've been able to hit that. Again, lots of variability in that. If you're a partner wondering why the AFEs you're seeing don't reflect that. But that's kind of our best guess of if we're somewhat in manufacturing mode, what could we do today? And then you can see the economic returns at $50 WTI and $55 WTI, which, obviously in the corporate slide deck, the oil price is changing every day. I think yesterday WTI closed at $46 a barrel, and I would highlight that there's not a ton of margin to work with right now. So cost control will be paramount as we roll into manufacturing mode. But you can see still pretty good rates of return if we were at $50 oil today, 58% IRR, good net of the capital we spent, $2.2 million. And then paying out in 13 months. Generally, we'd love to see payouts under a year, just so we can deploy our capital program and we're not building debt year over year. So ideally, that's where we could get these, and we're working on it. On the cost control side, so this is just a quick slide to point out, if you're a service provider, why we're constantly trying to negotiate price with you and figure out a deal that is going to work for us. The graph on the right-hand side shows the well capital on the y-axis, and then different line items that will reduce the CapEx downward. Multi-well pad drilling being one of the biggest things. That's something we would love to get to, and we plan to, but we're using 1 mile wells to delineate what we're working with, and then we'll come back in and work to sorry guys. We'll work to get those done. I think someone's over there pressing a button to mess with me. And then obviously on the left-hand side, you see NPV per well on the left, or on the y-axis, and it's pretty simple math. PV 0 undiscounted, the capital you save on the right then leads to a higher NPV on the left. And again, this slide's at $55 WTI, so those rates of returns you're seeing are somewhat hypothetical and not what we're actually seeing today when you take into account the differential. So stepping away from Castle Peak generally, you can see that as we've progressed, our results have gotten better. And that's just what the engineers do. They get in there, they tweak the designs, and continually make things better. So you can see our initial program of Castle Peak on the left. We were getting IPs that we were actually pretty excited about, kind of 200 to 400 barrels a day. At the time, we were comparing that to vertical wells, which we were really excited if we got a 200 barrel a day vertical. So step that up, continue to tweak things. You can see the progression along the way. Actually drilled a 1 mile well with an increased tonnage, reflecting some of the learnings from other basins across the U.S., approaching 1,000 barrels a day there. And then the 2 mile well with an old style frac is right in that same range. So early days, but already kind of seeing IPs 10 times what we were with vertical wells. And then we've drilled and released results on one Wasatch well, which obviously we are going to be following up on. That's 2,000 barrels a day. So really encouraging there, and continuing to design and delineate. And then just to speak to general industry activity in Uteland, Butte, and Wasatch. Again, you can see the cum oil on the y-axis and days on production on the right. What you're looking for on this graph is the slope. The higher the slope, the better the well. So you can see the two mile Wasatch wells of the industry average, the Uteland Butte average, and the recent 1 mile well that's approaching a 2 mile well. So obvious to us is we need to drill some 2 mile Wasatch wells and see what we can repeat. And then you can see the IPs averaging, roughly 1,650 and then 2,000 in the Wasatch. So very exciting, very early days, but again, just an example of how many zones are here to explore. So again, just to summarize our activity, we entered in 2012. We were kind of the new kid on the block. Everyone was excited to meet us at first, and then it's kind of like, okay, prove it, guys. Prove you do what you say. So since that time, we've invested $1.9 billion. That includes capital and acquisitions. We're really proud of the fact that we've kept rigs running throughout the entire downturn. This entire year, we've been running 3 to 4 rigs. We've increased daily production by 140%, which is astounding considering we're in delineation mode. So I'm really excited when we kind of get to that next step of manufacturing mode. And then we've been able to capture more acreage. It's always kind of a dilemma of how much results we share versus how much we can capture, but I think it's time to try to get the results out there and help get the rising tide to float all the boats. In 2017, a low estimate will be $240 million that we'll spend throughout the year. As results continue to improve, we continue to shift capital weekly. So likely when we report next year, it'll be higher than that. And then within the basin, we've donated over $1 million to local charities and communities, working with everybody. And now we employ 90 people living and working in the basin. And I'd love to give those guys a big kudos because we couldn't do it without them. They're out there every day fighting the hot weather, the cold weather, and the pumps don't stop pumping. And in Denver, we get the luxury of kind of checking out at the end of the day. That doesn't happen out here. So they do an amazing job, and I can't say that enough. So what's our strategy go forward? 2018 is going to be at a bare minimum very similar to 2017. Expect kind of 240 to 250 million bucks at a minimum. Obviously, we're watching oil prices, and we will adjust accordingly. The strategy, oddly enough, is still the same. To be accurate, I did tweak a few words. I don't think we can say it's a new core area for us anymore, but it is a core area. And we've actually got a lot of experience in the United States now, which we're excited about. So we are assimilating. So thank you very much for the time to present today. And I hope our results kind of highlighted the potential of the basin and how excited we are. And I'd like to thank all our partners, all the agencies, the Ute tribe. Everyone has made it possible. All the permits, all the behind the scenes phone calls and shuffling, and it's just an amazing place to do business. I wouldn't say an easy place to do business, but a great place to do business. So thank you very much.